May 1899, Volume 2, How All Heaven is Veiled in the Church. This morning, Jesus aroused much compassion. He was so afflicted and in suffering that I would not dare to ask him any question. We would look at each other in silence. Every now and then he would give me a kiss and I would kiss him. And he continued to make himself seen in this way several times. On the last time, he made me see the church, telling me these exact words: "All heaven is veiled in my church, just as in heaven one is the head, which is God, and many other saints of different conditions, orders, and merits, so in my church, in which all heaven is veiled. One is the head, which is the Pope, and the sacrosanct Trinity is veiled even in the triple tiara he covers his head, and many other members that depend on this head, that is, different dignities, various orders, superior and inferior, from the littlest to the greatest. They all serve to embellish my church. Each one, according to its degree, has the office entrusted to it, and by the exact fulfillment of the virtues, it comes to give from itself a splendour so very fragrant to my church that the earth and heaven are perfumed and illuminated, and the people are so drawn by this light and by this fragrance that it is almost impossible for them not to surrender to the truth. I leave it to you then to consider those infected members, which instead of shedding light, cast darkness. How much torment they cause in my church." While Jesus was saying this, I saw the confessor near him. Jesus stared at him with his penetrating gaze. Then he turned to me and told me, "I want you to have full confidence in the confessor, even in the smallest things. So much so that there must be no difference for you between me and him. And according to your confidence and faith in his words, so I will concur." In the very act in which Jesus was saying these, I remembered about certain temptations of the devil which had produced a little bit of distrust in me. But Jesus, with his vigilant eye, immediately corrected me. And at that very moment, I felt that distrust being removed from within my interior. May the Lord be always blessed, who has so much care for this soul, so miserable and sinful. End of the reading. The 2nd of May, 1905, Volume 6. The Three Types of Resurrection which Suffering Contains. As I continued to be in suffering a little more than usual, on coming, my good Jesus told me, "My daughter, suffering contains three types of resurrection. First, suffering makes the soul rise again to grace. Second, as suffering advances, it gathers the virtues and the soul rises again to sanctity. Third, as suffering continues, it perfects the virtues, it embellishes them with splendor, a beautiful crown, and the soul crowned rises again to glory on earth and to glory in heaven." Having said this, he disappeared. End of the reading. The 2nd of May, 1915, Volume 11. One who lives in the divine will takes possession of the most holy humanity of Jesus, and just like another Jesus, she can present herself before the divinity to plead for her brothers and sisters. My days are more and more bitter. This morning my sweet Jesus came in such a suffering state that it cannot be described. In seeing him so suffering, I would have wanted to relieve him at any cost. Not knowing what to do, I squeezed into my heart, and approaching his mouth, I tried to suckle part of his interior bitterness. Nothing. No matter how hard I tried to suckle, nothing would come out. I returned to my efforts, but it was all in vain. Jesus was crying. I was crying too in seeing I could not alleviate his pains in any way. What a cruel torment. Jesus was crying because he wanted to pour out, but his justice prevented him from doing it. I was crying in seeing him cry, and because I could not help him. There are no words to describe these pains. Sobbing, Jesus told me, "My daughter, sin snatched chastisements and wars from my hands. I am forced to allow them, and at the same time I cry and suffer with the creature." I felt like dying for the pain. And Jesus, wanting to distract me, added, "My daughter, don't lose heart. This too is in my will, because only the souls who live in my will can confront my justice. Only those who live in my volition have free access to share in the divine decrees and plead for their brothers. Those who reside in my will possess all the fruits of my humanity, because my humanity had its limits, while my will has no limits. My humanity lived in my will, drowned in it, inside and out. Now the souls who live in my will are the closest ones to my humanity. Making my humanity their own because I gave it to them, they can present themselves before the divinity, being covered by it, like another me, so as to disarm the divine justice and plead for forgiveness for the perverted creatures. As they live in my will, they live in me. And since I live in everyone, they also live in everyone and for everyone. They live hovering in the air like the sun, while their prayers, acts, reparations, and everything they do are like the rays which descend from them for the good of all. End of the reading. The 2nd of May 1917, Volume 12. How Jesus Died Little by Little. Finding myself in my usual state, I was lamenting to my sweet Jesus because of his privations, telling him, "My love, who could ever imagine that your privation had to cost me so much? I feel I am dying little by little. Each one of my acts is a death that I feel, because I cannot find the life. But dying and continuing to live is even more cruel. It is double death." My lovable Jesus came flashing by and told me, "My daughter, courage and firmness in everything. And then don't you want to imitate me? I too died little by little. As the creatures offended me in my steps, I felt a tearing in my feet, but with such bitterness of spasm as to be capable of giving me death. And while I felt like I was dying, yet I would not die. As they offended me with their works, I felt death in my hands, and at the cruel torment I agonized. I felt faint, but the will of the Father sustained me. I died, and I did not die, as the evil voices and the horrendous blasphemies of creatures were reflected in my voice. I felt like suffocating, my word being choked, poisoned. I felt death in my voice, but I did not die. And my tortured heart, as it palpitated, I felt the evil lives in my heartbeat, souls being ripped from me, and my heart was continuously torn and lacerated. I agonized and died continuously in each creature, in each offence. Yet love, the divine will, forced me to live. This is the reason for your dying little by little. I want you together with me. I want your company in my deaths. Aren't you happy? End of the reading. The 2nd of May, 1923, Volume 15. When the Fiat Voluntas Tua has its fulfillment on earth as it is in heaven, then will the complete fulfillment of the second part of the Our Father occur. I felt my poor mind as though dissolved in the immensity of the eternal volition, and my sweet Jesus, returning to speak about the most holy will of God, told me, "My daughter, how well your acts done in my will harmonize. They harmonize with mine, with those of my beloved Mama, and one disappears within the other, forming one single act. It seems that heaven is on earth, and the earth is in heaven, and the echo of 1 in 3 and of 3 in 1 of the sacrosanct Trinity. Oh, how sweet it sounds to our hearing, how it enraptures us, but so much as to capture our will from heaven to earth. and then my fiat voluntas tua has its fulfillment on earth as it is in heaven. Then will the complete fulfillment of the second part of the Our Father occur, that is, give us this day our daily bread. I said, Our Father, in the name of all, I ask you for 3 kinds of bread every day, the bread of your will, or rather, more than bread, because if bread is necessary 2 or 3 times a day, this one is necessary at each moment and in all circumstances. Even more, it must be not only bread, but like balsamic air that brings life, the circulation of the divine life in the creature. Father, if this bread of your will is not given, I will never be able to receive all the fruits of my sacramental life, which is the second bread we ask you every day. Oh, how my sacramental life feels discomforted because the bread of your will does not nourish them. On the contrary, it finds the corrupted bread of the human will. Oh, how disgusting it is to me, how I shun it. And even though I go to them, I cannot give them the fruits, the goods, the effects, the sanctity, because I do not find our bread in them. And if I give something else, it is in small proportion, according to their dispositions, but not all the goods which I contain. And my sacramental life is patiently waiting for man to take the bread of the supreme will in order to be able to give all the good of my sacramental life. See then how the sacrament of the Eucharist, and not only that one, but all the sacraments left to my church and instituted by me, will give all the fruits which they contain and complete fulfillment when our bread, the will of God, is done on earth as it is in heaven. Then I asked for the third bread, the material one. How could I say, give us this day our bread? I could do so in view of the fact that as man would do our will, what was ours would be his, and so the Father would no longer have to give the bread of his will, the bread of my sacramental life and the daily bread of natural life to illegitimate, usurping, evil children, but to legitimate and good children who would share in the goods of their Father. This is why I said, give us our bread. Then will they eat the blessed bread. Everything will smile around them, and heaven and earth will carry the mark of the harmony of their Creator. After this I added, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. So charity also will be perfect. Once man has eaten the bread of my will as my humanity ate it, then will forgiveness have the mark of heroism as I had it on the cross. Then will the virtues be absorbed into my will and receive the mark of true heroism and of divine virtues. They will be like many little rivulets which will gush forth from the bosom of the great sea of my will. And if I added, and lead us not into temptation, how could God ever lead man to temptation? It was because man is always man, free in himself, since I never take away from him the rights I gave him in creating him, and he, frightened and fearful of himself, tacitly cries out and prays without expressing it with words, give us the bread of your will that we may reject all temptations, and by virtue of this bread deliver us from every evil. Amen. See then how all the goods of man find again their connection, the tight bond of the let us make man in our image and likeness, the validity of each of his acts, the restitution of the lost goods, as well as the signature and the assurance that his lost happiness, both terrestrial and celestial, is given back to him. Therefore, it is so necessary that my will be done on earth as it is in heaven, that I had no other interest, nor did I teach any other prayer but the Our Father. And the Church, faithful executor and depository of my teachings, has it always on her lips and in every circumstance, and everyone, learned and ignorant, little and great, priests and lay people, kings and subjects, all pray that my will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Do you not want then that my will descend upon earth? But just as redemption had its beginning in a virgin, as I was not conceived in all men in order to redeem them, even though whoever wants it can enter the good of redemption, and each one can receive me in the sacrament for himself alone, in the same way, now my will must have its beginning, possession, growth, and development in one virgin creature. And then whoever disposes himself and wants it will enter the goods which the living in my will contains. Had I not been conceived in my beloved Mama, redemption would never have taken place. In the same way, if I do not operate the prodigy of making one soul live in my supreme will, the fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven will not take place in the human generations. End of the reading. The 2nd of May, 1930, volume 28. How the divine will runs toward the creature to embrace her and make her happy, and it has the virtue of emptying her of all evils. The race of the I love you in the divine will. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues. Its light eclipses me, its powerful strength chains me, its beauty enraptures me, so much as to feel myself nailed without being able to move from thinking of and looking at a will so holy. Its life knocks out mine and I get lost in its immensity. But while my mind was wandering within the omnipotent fiat, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and clasping me in his arms told me, my daughter, the divine will always runs as prime act of life toward the creature, and it runs to make her happy, to embrace her, to empty the weight of all human acts. In fact, everything that is not my will in the creature is hard, heavy, and oppressing, and my will empties all that is human, and with its light breath it renders all things light. Therefore, the sign that the soul lives in my divine will is that she feels happiness within herself, because my will is happiness by its own nature, nor can it give unhappiness to one who lives in it, because it does not possess it, nor does it want to or can change its nature. Therefore, one who lives in my fiat feels within herself the virtue bearer of happiness, and in everything she does, she feels a vein of happiness flowing that renders every act, every pain, and sacrifice light. This happiness carries with itself the emptying of all evils, and it fills the creature with invincible strength, in such a way that with all truth she can say, I can do anything. I can reach anything because I feel transmuted into the divine will that has banished weaknesses, miseries, passions away from me. My very will, made happy by its happiness, wants to drink in large gulps its divine happiness and does not want to have anything more to do with living but of divine will. Unhappinesses, bitternesses, weaknesses, passions do not enter into my will, but remain outside of it. Its balsamic air sweetens and fortifies everything, and the more the soul lives in it and repeats her acts in my divine volition, the more degrees of happiness, of sanctity, of strength and divine beauty she acquires. And even in the very created things, she feels the happiness of her Creator that they bring to her. My divine will wants to make the creature who lives in it feel the nature of its happiness, and therefore it makes her happy in the light of the sun, in the air that she breathes, in the water that she drinks, in the food that she eats, in the flower that cheers her. In everything, it makes one feel that it can give but happiness to the creature. Therefore, heaven is not far from her, but inside of her, wanting to make her happy in everything. Then I continued my round in the creation to follow the divine fiat in all created things, and everywhere I tried to place my usual I love you, to requite it for its such great love spread in the whole universe. But my mind wanted to interrupt my race of my continuous I love you by saying to me, But is there in me the life of this I love you that I keep repeating always? But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, clasping me to himself, told me, my daughter, you have forgotten that an I love you in my will has the virtue that after it is said once, it never stops saying, I love you, I love you. The I love you in my divine will is life. And as life, it cannot cease to live. It must have its continuous act. My fiat does not know how to do finite acts, and everything that is done in it by the creature acquires continuous life. And just as the breath, the heartbeat, the continuous motion are necessary for life in order to live, so do the acts done in my divine will, having their origin in it, change into life, and as life they acquire the continuation of the act itself, without ever ceasing. Therefore, your I love you is nothing other than the continuation of your first I love you. As life, it wants the nourishment in order to grow, the breath, the heartbeat, the motion in order to live. And by your repeating your I love you, it feels the heartbeat, the breath, the motion, and it grows in the fullness of love. And it serves to multiply as many lives of love for as many I love yous as you say. If you knew how beautiful it is to see all creation strewn with as many lives of love for as many I love yous as you say. So one I love you calls and demands with insistence another I love you. And this is why you feel a need, a necessity of love to follow the race of your I love you. True good never remains isolated, more so in my divine will, since it being life that has no beginning and no end, everything that is done in it is not subject either to ending or to being interrupted. Therefore, one I love you serves to maintain and call to life another I love you. These are steps of life of love that the creature takes in my own volition. Therefore, do not stop and continue the race of your I love you to the one who so much loves you. End of the reading. The 2nd of May, 1938, volume 36. How the divine will constantly asks for the human will to be able to say, you did not deny me anything, so neither can I deny you anything. How it forms its little sea of love in the divine ocean. The creation, the sweet enchantment of the manifestation of God's love toward creatures. My flight continues in the divine will. Oh, how surprising it is to see it asking continuously for the human will in order to make it into one of its marvels of love. How touching to see that a divine fiat asks the creatures for their human wills. My sweet Jesus, in seeing me so moved, came back for his short little visit, and all goodness said, my daughter, it is always our love that with irresistible strength pushes us toward the creature to say, in the attitude of asking as if we needed her, you loved me and I love you. You gave yourself to me and I give to you. Now you must know the extent of our love. Every time we ask for her will and she gives it, she also gives us lives for as many times as she gives us her will. So, to give her the opportunity and credit, we remain always in the act of asking her to give us her life, not once, but as many times as we ask her. Do you think it's nothing that the creature can then say, I gave you many lives, not once but thousands of times, for as many times as you asked me? And we not only love her with twofold love for each time she gave us her will, deserving it again every time, but we feel more glorified and loved for as many lives as she gave us. This is nothing other than the exuberance of our love, the keenness, the stratagems, excesses, and follies of our operating love that just can't stop finding ever new ways to deal with the creature, to be able to say, this many times we asked for her will and she never denied it. We can refuse her nothing. Isn't this an insuperable sign of love that only a God can make? Further, our love never stops. We always try to keep the creature within us. As she loves our will, we let her own little sea of love be formed in the immensity of our ocean of love, in order to feel her love inside of ours, loving together with ours. It will be smaller, we know, since created love can never reach the creative one, but our content is unspeakable in seeing her loving inside our love and with our love. A detached love separated from us could never please or hurt us. It would just lose the best of love itself. So every time she loves us in our fiat, her tiny sea of love keeps growing in our divine ocean, and we feel more glorified and loved in seeing the growth of our creature's love. After this, I was doing my rounds in the creation to trace all the acts done by the divine will, and my sweet Jesus added, "My blessed daughter, creation is the sweetest enchantment of our love manifested toward creatures. There is the blue of the sky with its stars, the bright sun, air, wind, and sea, always fixed, never moving, telling man of our incessant love. Then on the ground there are flowers, plants, trees, tiny grass, and each of them has the voice, motion, and love life of their creator, even the most tiny blade of grass, to tell everybody the love story of the one who created them. It seems that things created in the earth die, but it's not true. Rather, they rise again to be even more beautiful. There is nothing other than the new resurrection of God's love toward creatures. While they seem to be dying, in order to give a sweet surprise of love, they rise again more beautiful. And God puts the new enchantment of blooming and fruits under everybody's eyes to be loved. One can say that each flower and plant carries the kiss, the I love you of its creator to the one who is looking at it and takes it. This is why our supreme love expects that in everything the creature recognizes us and sends to us her I love you. But we wait in vain. In all created things, our supreme being manifests our power, wisdom, goodness, and the order of our love, and we give it to man so that he may love us with powerful, wise, all good love, being himself the image of our divine love. All this can be received by the one who lives in our will, since we can say that she lives from our own life. On the other hand, outside of our will, love is weak, wisdom is insipid, goodness turns into defects, order into disorder. Poor creature, without our will, how we pity her. Furthermore, loving our creature incessantly, we want to find in her unceasing love, but when she doesn't love us, she forms big gaps of love in her soul, and our love, unable to find itself in those gaps, does not know where to lean. It remains suspended, goes wandering, runs, flies, not finding one who would receive it. It shouts in agonizing pains, "I am not loved. I cannot find one who loves me." Then he added in a more tender tone, "Dearest daughter, if you knew the extent of my love for the soul who lives in my will, you would love me so much that your heart would burst from joy, and your love and my love would consume you, devour you for pure love of me. Now you must know that my divine will gathers all that the creature living in it does. Nothing done in my fiat can leave, but remains in our fields of light. And my will delights in picking up motion, breathing, steps, words, and thoughts, all that she has done in our volition to incorporate it in our own life. If I didn't do so, our life would miss that breath, motion, everything the creature did in our will. They are really parts of our life, so we feel the need for them to continue their breathing, moving, and walking inside ours. Therefore, we call the creature to live in our will, breath, heartbeat, motion, and love. We are neither able nor do we want to detach ourselves from even a breath of one who lives in our will. It would be as if our life were torn away. As she moves, breathes, and so forth, my will puts on a festive air and keeps gathering all that the creature does, loving her as if it would contribute to form breath and motion in the creature, and at the same time, as if the creature could give breath and motion to God. These are the excesses and the inventions of our love that is only happy when it can say, what I do, she does, as we move, sigh, and love together. Then we feel the happiness, glory, and appreciation for our creative work, which returns all love into our divine womb as it came out in a fire of love from our paternal bosom. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.